All right, we ready? Is it slowed pretty well, Miriam? What we got? All right, I think we've got most people. There'll be a few people coming in here a little bit, but good afternoon, everybody. My name is Zach Trogdon. I'm the Chief of Public Transportation here at DRPT. Thank you for joining us on Halloween, taking your time out to doing other fun things you could be doing right now. But we've been reaching out to you all about a new grants management system that we're instituting here at DRPT. And so we wanted to take some time today to actually have a little bit of an interactive time to go over some aspects of that system. It's still going to be at a high level. I'm just actually starting with my camera on right now. I'm going to turn it off so we can save bandwidth, but just so you all know that we haven't been replaced by AI here at DRPT yet. So with that, as I said, we're going to go over some of the high-level aspects of the new grant management system. One housekeeping item. We know there could be a lot of questions. I mean, switching to a new system. So if you all could put your questions in the chat as we go through the meeting, that would greatly help us. We'll try to get to as many of those as we can. We have several DRPT staff on the call, so we may be able to answer you sort of in real time, but at the end, we'll also try to go through and make sure we've got to as many of the questions as we can. But depending on how many, we may be able to get through them within this hour we have. So with that, if we could go look at the agenda very quickly for what we're going to talk about today. First, we're going to talk about some of the key milestones you can expect in going through WebGrants. And some of those are kind of listed below, where we're going to get into a little more detail today to prepare you for getting into the system when we do make that switch on December 1st. We're still working out some of the bugs in the system. All of you that have been through, software transitions before and system transitions, there can just be things that you're kind of always tinkering with. So we appreciate all of you taking part in these meetings to prepare for the transition. So next slide. So real quickly, a couple of key milestones to be aware of. November 15th, Olga, which is the current system, is going to be, I guess you could say, shut down. So what that means for all of you is that you need to get in any type of business, such as reimbursement requests, contracts, and extensions and things like that, de-obligations, project closures well ahead of time. If I could hold on just a second, some people are saying the slides aren't advancing. We had that problem yesterday. Miriam, did you want to say anything? I think it's just sometimes it's just sort of the bandwidth on the other end. So we'll try to. Miriam, did you say they could maybe sometimes advance the slides themselves? Okay. You may have the option at the bottom at the bottom of the presentation to advance them yourself, but we're on slide 3 right now. So November 15th is the last day that Olga will be open. So you could submit things in there November 15th, but certainly we recommend submitting them well ahead of time so our staff can have time to review them, especially in the case of things like reimbursement requests. Some reimbursement requests can run, a couple hundred pages of backup. So our recommendation is to get anything you want in well before the 15th. That'll just be the day that you cannot access Olga anymore at the end of the day. So please get in things before then. So the next milestone date is December 1st, when we will actually go live in WebGrants. And so you all, as partner agents, it is a Friday, you all can go in and begin resuming grant-related activities. We have made an assumption here that some of that will be most likely seeking reimbursement for one of your first things. So we know a number of agencies depend on these reimbursements for helping out for operations and getting your projects done. And also December 1st is traditionally the opening of the application cycle, and that will still be the case. So you can go in and open up an application and begin that as well on December 1st. And then, of course, just the last date is February 1st, which is remaining the same as it is currently, which is the due date for grant applications for the fiscal year 25 grant cycle. So, okay, next slide. So in terms of, just want to give you very quickly, a couple other things you can expect after this. We will be putting together here at DRPT some self-guided resources, such as recorded demonstrations of the WebGrants interface that we'll post to our YouTube channel. So that will show you some of the more common tasks you may need to do in there, and we'll get those up. We'll get those up on the website in the next month or so. And as well as written tutorials that will have screenshots of the WebGrants interface, again, for some of the most common tasks that you'll have to do, some of the more important tasks. So you can expect to see those resources. Again, we'll post them to our links or things on our DRPT website. We're also planning to help in this transition to have access to an email, kind of like a help desk, where you can submit WebGrant inquiries, things that you need to ask that easier than making a call. Somebody could perhaps get back to you, just one of those things that's not a complete emergency. But so that'll be something else we'll be coming out with that we'll be communicating to you ahead of time. And also we're looking at having some office hours where you could speak to DRPT staff with your WebGrants questions. Again, maybe sometimes you do need more immediate help, or you're working on something that you need to really get through. So we will have some personal type of help available. So we're working out all the details to offer that over the next few weeks, and so we will be communicating that out to you all. And also there is going to be some different terminology when we switch to WebGrants from our current Olga system, and so that could be confusing. So we'll get into that in a second. I'm going to turn it over here to Grant Sparks, who will begin with that. And so that will hopefully be a little introduction to the system for you. And thanks again for attending today. Grant?
Thanks, Zach, and good afternoon, everyone. Grant Sparks, the Director of Statewide Transit Programs with DRPT. As Zach just mentioned, we will be pulling together a comprehensive crosswalk of terminology, given that many of the terms that we currently use in the Olga system will be different in the WebGrant system. So on this slide, we've kind of given you all a preview of some of those different terms. This is by no means a comprehensive listing. Again, that will be shared very soon, but just giving you guys an idea of some of these terminology changes. So starting at the top, in Olga, we currently use the term grantee. In WebGrants, the grantee will be referred to as an organization. Grant programs will now be called funding opportunities in the WebGrants system. This is something you'll see once you gain access to WebGrants. You'll see kind of a tab for funding opportunities where you will be able to filter through any open or active funding opportunities where we're accepting applications. Reimbursement requests will now be called claims in the system. This is kind of a big one that even DRPT staff, we've had to grow accustomed to, because we've just always used reimbursement requests. But again, it will now be called a claim. The next one down here on the list, and looking on the right-hand side, we're introducing a new term called an encumbrance. We don't have a really good one-for-one term to that's encumbrance is replacing. The closest thing to it in Olga is a suspended reimbursement, but essentially an encumbrance is going to be a mechanism that DRPT will impose on specific grants to essentially lock them down from any grant activity. So that's kind of, a suspended reimbursement kind of does the same thing, but encumbrance is a little bit broader. So we will be introducing that with the WebGrant system. The next three here, we think are big improvements with the WebGrants program. Budget amendments, scope changes, and extension requests will all come in as contract amendments in WebGrants. So for those of you who have processed a scope change or a budget amendment in the past, you know that Olga actually doesn't have an online form for those. We have a PDF form that we request our grantees to fill out for any budget amendments or scope changes. Now we will be able to capture that information in the system via a contract amendment. And in that contract amendment module will be the same location where you would extend your project as well, or put in an extension request rather. Second from the bottom, this is another big one for you all to be aware of. Open or executed status of a grant. You all should see that in Olga for all the grants that you have with us. They will all be migrated into WebGrants via underway status. So we're getting rid of the open or executed terms, and everything will be in underway status. And I'll talk a little bit more about that here on a future slide. And then the last one here, project number in Olga will now be called grant number in WebGrants. So Miriam, you can flip to slide 6. All right. So on December 1st, when WebGrants officially launches, the first thing that all of our partners will need to do is to set up their organization within the WebGrants platform. The good news is that we've made a decision internally to migrate the organizational data for all organizations that have open or executed DRPT grants in Olga. So that should take care of probably 99.9% of our partners. So long as you have an open or an executed grant, your organizational data will be migrated into WebGrants. But in the event that you do not have an open or executed DRPT grant in Olga, you will need to register as a new organization. So this screenshot on the right of this slide, this is the landing page of what WebGrants will look like. And so again, for new organizations, you will need to click that yellow box which says click here to register, and then fill out your organization's information to officially register in the WebGrants system. But for organizations with the open or executed grants who will be migrated in automatically, we are also pulling one user from Olga to be migrated in as well. And that will be the Olga master user. So every organization currently in Olga must have a master user, and we are selecting that user to be migrated over automatically as well. So a little homework for all of you to do in advance of the migration. If you do not know who your organization's master user is in Olga, we strongly suggest that you figure that out before the migration so that there are no surprises come December 1st. And if you have trouble figuring that out, you can always reach out to DRPT and we can let you know who your Olga master user is. One more thing about the master user here, their password will need to be recreated upon accessing WebGrants. We cannot transfer passwords over into the WebGrants system, so there will be a prompt to reset that password. Slide 7, Miriam. All right, so upon migration into WebGrants, that one user who is migrated will have the ability to add additional users to their organization. I didn't put this on the slide, but there will be no longer the term master user. Essentially, all users within an organization in WebGrants will be assigned a generic grantee user role, and they will all have the same permissions. So what this means is, and again, and all users will have the ability to add additional users. So if user A is the master user and they log in for the first time on December 1st, they can add user B. User B, when they log in, they will be able to add users C and D. And so it's kind of a domino effect. but all users will have those capabilities, and we wanted to make sure folks were well aware of that. Also, right here at the very bottom, these last bullet points, there will be a couple actions that we will ask all organizations to complete prior to performing any grant-related activity within the WebGrants system. The first one will be to resubmit a W-9 form. We will be providing, some demonstrations, recorded demonstrations about how to actually do this. So don't worry. Don't worry about that too much. We will help you do this, but just know that your organization will need to resubmit a W-9 form before you can do any grant-related activity. You will also need to fill out a WebGrants entity agreement and attach that in WebGrants as well. We're going to be sending out some communication on November 8th. To all of our partner agencies, and we plan on including a blank W-9 form in that communication. Hopefully, we'll have our WebGrants entity agreement finalized by then. If we do, then we'll go ahead and attach that as well, so that you guys can go ahead and populate those documents and have them ready for attachment in WebGrants come December 1st. But again, more information to come on these bullet points at the bottom of the screen. You can flip to the next slide, Miriam. So on slide 8 here, one of the first things that we're anticipating all of our partner agencies wanting to do come December 1st, obviously they're going to have to set up their organizations and attach the W-9 and the entity agreement. But we are anticipating folks wanting to submit claims fairly immediately. And again, these were previously called reimbursement requests, but will now be called claims in WebGrants. The good news here is that the approach to submitting claims is largely unchanged within the WebGrants system. Agencies will identify the total amount expended during the period, and they will attach the supporting documentation for those expenses. It is essentially the same information that we're asking in our current system, Olga. It'll be the same information that you input for a claim in the WebGrants platform. So no changes there. Also, the third bullet point here, this is an important one. Any submitted but unapproved reimbursement requests from Olga will be transferred into WebGrants. So if you submit a reimbursement request on November 15th, you do not have to worry about that reimbursement request not being migrated into WebGrants. Everything will be transferred so long as it's submitted in the Olga platform on November 15th or earlier. So we wanted to make sure you all were aware of that. If your DRPT program manager has not approved it yet, they will not be able to review or approve the reimbursement request or claim until WebGrants opens up on December 1st. So no payments can be made in that blackout period. And then the last bullet point here, we strongly encourage agencies to submit any urgent reimbursement requests in Olga well before the November 15th blackout date. And we say urgent reimbursement requests because if your agency needs to get paid, on or around November 15th, maybe within the week after that, you're going to have to submit your reimbursement request well before the 15th. Usually it takes at least a couple days for our program managers to review the reimbursement requests, and then some additional time to process those reimbursement requests. So the sooner that you can get your reimbursement requests entered into Olga, the higher the chance that it will be approved prior to the blackout date. So we wanted to stress that as well. You can move to the next slide, Miriam. All right, so we're on slide 9. The next thing that we wanted to bring to everyone's attention was executing contracts in WebGrants. Similar to claims, Contracts in WebGrants, while they will function the same way, generally speaking, they will look a little bit different as they will be system generated. All of you who have grants with us are used to kind of the format of the contracts that we've used over the years. We're trying to mimic that format as best as possible, but it will look a little, there will be some additional information on the contracts as they will be system generated. The second bullet point here, DRPT will be coordinating with all of our agencies to determine who within your agency should be eligible for signing contracts. This is a little bit different. We will have the ability to select on our end who to send the contract or notify within the grantee agency, who to notify for signing a contract. So we're gonna be reaching out to all of you to identify who that signature authority should be. And then the third bullet point here, this is a difference between the OLGA system and the WebGrant system. Contracts will be fully approved by DRPT first and then executed by the grantee. Currently, we have a few staff have to sign off on a contract before it is released to the grantee. The grantee then signs the contract and it comes back for final execution by DRPT. But now we are going to internally get all of our approvals and signatures, and then the grantee will be the final sign off. And so once you take action and sign a contract, that grant will officially be executed and ready to go. Slide 10, please, Miriam. All right, and my last slide here, this is to discuss some of the various grant management tools in WebGrants. And this is where we really think that WebGrants will shine, as the grant management tools are way more advanced and robust than what we have in the current OLGA system. The most significant change is that all grants that we will have in WebGrants must have a corresponding grant application. So it's basically like showing the entire history of that grant, going all the way back to the application that was submitted to DRPT for those funds. We are not anticipating that the data that's transferred over from OLGA will have this capability. It's really for any new grants that we execute. So starting in FY25, we would have the corresponding grant application essentially attached to all grants, which we think is a bonus, because many times our grantees, they go in and they cannot figure out where the corresponding grant application is for their grants because there is currently no connection. So we do see this as a value add. Moving down the list here, existing grants will also have the ability to be sorted by funding opportunity, by fiscal year, by start and end dates, by funding amount. These are filters and sorts that we currently do not have the ability to use within the OLGA system. So these are just some ways to organize your grants a little bit better, which again, we think is a value add. The fourth bullet point here, I already kind of covered in my terminology slide, but WebGrants will be tracking all changes to projects via contract amendments. So again, this includes budget revisions, scope changes, and extension requests. But you will be able to open a grant in the WebGrants system, click on the contract amendments tab, and then you'll be able to see all the various changes that have been made over the history of that grant, whether it's a scope change, budget revision, extension request, or anything else. So all that data will be organized nicely. There are some additional tools and enhancements that DRPT does not anticipate that we'll be able to launch on December 1st. We're still analyzing how to use those tools, but we did want to just mention that we may have some enhancements that we will be announcing after December 1st. And then the last bullet point here, all projects in open status in Olga will come into WebGrants with an encumbrance. So going back to the terminology slide, again, encumbrance is a way for DRPT to essentially lock down any grants in the system from any grant-related activity. You might also remember from that terminology slide that I mentioned open and executed status for grants will no longer be viewable in WebGrants, and that they will all come in as underway status. So if you have a project in Olga that is currently in open status, it will come over into WebGrants as an underway grant, but with an encumbrance because we're going to lock it down. And again, for those of you who are savvy in Olga, you know that any grant that's in open status, it's in open status because there's no contract associated with that grant. Once a contract is executed, then it moves to an executed grant. So the encumbrance is going to serve the purpose of essentially locking down underway grants in WebGrants until a contract has been executed, and then DRPT will turn the encumbrance off of that grant, which will then allow the grantee to perform their grant activities. So it's a little bit of a different a way of doing things. Terminology is certainly different here, but we did just want to make sure folks were aware of some of these changes. So that's all I have, and now I will pass it to Dan Sonnenklar to walk you all through just a couple things with our grant applications and performance data. So Dan, take it away.
Thank you, Grant. My name is Dan Sonnenklar. I am a statewide transit planning manager here in the Richmond office of DRPT. And as Grant mentioned, I am going to go through a few high-level points here regarding applications in the WebGrants system and performance data reporting moving forward. First things first is that applicants will be able to create applications starting on December 1st, as you all usually are able to do. And they will be due for the FY25 cycle on February 1st of next year. And so we are sticking to our normal 2-month application window. I'm sure during that time, we will provide some more specific application-oriented training. Real quick, we wanted to go over some overall differences between Olga and WebGrants and what you will see when you sign into the system. On the right side of the screen here is a screenshot of what funding opportunities look like in WebGrants. So the first bullet point here that I have is that state programs are now called funding opportunities in WebGrants, which Grant mentioned a moment ago. And as you see on the right, funding opportunities have a designated tab on the left side of the screen at all times. And so they will be organized within there at any given point in time. In general, the information that we are going to be requesting within each of the applications in each funding area, or funding opportunity rather, will be similar to previous years, if not the same, but the layout and the kind of interaction with the application may be significantly different. One of the goals here was to try to capture within data fields almost all of the application information we need instead of using supplemental forms. Next slide, please. So one key point here about funding opportunities is that certain state programs will be split into multiple funding opportunities, whereas in the past you will all have recognized some of these as one application. So for example, there are 4 programs that are splitting into multiple different funding opportunities. First of all, we have the Merit Capital Assistance Program, which will be split into 4 separate funding opportunities, one for state of good repair vehicles, another for state of good repair for other assets, minor enhancements, and then major expansions. Within the operating assistance formula, we have 2 opportunities now, one for rural and one for urban agencies, and those that operate both would be required to fill out both. Within the TRIP program category, there also will be 4 funding opportunities, one for regional connectivity, another for zero and reduced fares, one for our new program of passenger amenities and facilities, and fourth for public safety, which is also a new program, sub-program within the TRIP overall program. And then also with our FTA 5310 program, we now have 3 funding opportunities in the system. One is for capital vehicles, the other is for capital other, and then there is the operating application as well. And so there are some other program areas within the system that have been split into multiple funding opportunities, but this will be a consistent kind of organization across the board. Next slide, please. So this slide spells out some specific improvements that we expect from the WebGrant system compared to our current system, Olga. First of all, system navigation for applications will be more intuitive within this system. It is a brand new design, and clicking around in the system is relatively intuitive compared to the Olga platform. Second, all funding opportunities will now be listed in WebGrants. In the past, especially on our public transportation side, not all funding opportunities were listed within Olga. When we would do one-off funding opportunities, we'd often collect applications via PDF or via another program, and now all funding opportunities will have their own dedicated application within the system. Third, many applications will be streamlined in WebGrants. As we were setting up these funding opportunities, we were able to review the information that we were collecting from applications to determine whether or not we needed to continue to collect all of that. And so some of them have been cut down or reorganized in ways that should help you and us. Number 4 here is that DRPT will be eliminating supplemental forms associated with the grant applications in most circumstances. So this is to say that any of the additional PDFs, spreadsheets, or other documents that you were all asked to fill out in tandem with an application will, for the most part, go away within the system. There are a few exceptions to that, one of them being the shelter form that we require from public transportation providers that are applying for federal funds. But other than that, we have incorporated PDFs into the actual data fields here. Another advantage is that DRPT will be able to request additional information from applicants within the WebGrants platform instead of via email correspondence or telephone call, or however we have gathered that information in the past. In addition, WebGrants will have more advanced versioning of information to prevent data loss. And to Grant's point, applicants will be able to see much of the data that's associated with their application once grants get underway. And we understand that this has been a problem over the years, that you all have been able to see your projects in the system, but not necessarily the rich information that you provided to us to scope those projects out. And so with this new WebGrant system, we should be able to tie the two together. Next slide, please. Okay, so for performance data reporting, for transit providers, human service transportation providers, and CAP grantees or grant recipients, we will continue to require a reporting of performance data on the 1st of every month. Now, reporters will no longer be able to submit data through Olga starting on the 15th. And we've made a decision internally for now to not use WebGrants to collect data after the 1st. And so we are currently in the process of developing an alternative system to collect this data. The temporary solution will likely be a standardized Excel spreadsheet to be uploaded and submitted monthly. But we will be providing additional information and training when the reporting process has been finalized. And we are in the process of finalizing that as we speak. And so that is the end of our presentation. I think we can move on to questions, and I'll kick it back to Grant to facilitate.
All right, thank you, Dan. Trying to catch up on chat activity on the chat log here. I know Zach has been kind of following along and answering some of the questions as they have come in. One that I think we wanted to certainly come back to, actually, Zach, you might have answered this, but there was a question about inactivity and timeout within WebGrants, and how long it is in WebGrants before you time out. While we were kind of walking through the slides, I checked with our IT team and they said that it will be 15 minutes. So I wanted to clarify that. Okay. One question from Caitlin. Will we be able to set threshold limits on users? For example, deobligations. Zach, did you want to take that one?
Yeah, sorry, my mic was off. Yeah, so we're working with our developer to try to see what our options are in that arena. So we certainly understand, wanting to have some ability for only certain tasks to be carried out by certain users. So we're kind of exploring that, but we don't have a concrete answer about those thresholds right now. So Grant had kind of gotten into that about where users are sort of brought in as generic, and we can set some rules, but those types of thresholds are something we're working on. So, thank you. Grant, the other question that came in early was about historical contracts, and that's sort of similar. Right now, and Grant, you can correct me, we're not planning on bringing, and we had this question yesterday in terms of closed projects. Grant, did you want to go into that a little more?
Yeah, so
okay.
it's our understanding currently that closed projects will not be migrated over into the WebGrants platform. DRPT staff will still have access to Olga and Symphony, so we can go in, and if you all need any information from your closed grants in Olga, we can probably pull that for you. But to Zach's point, this was brought up yesterday. Someone mentioned that they often refer back to their closed grants. Also brought up for auditing purposes, it's helpful to just be able to refer back to them. So this is an internal note that we have made for our IT team, which we're meeting with tomorrow to discuss. So we may be able to work out something where we're able to do something differently. But as of right now, closed grants are not going to be pulled in to WebGrants. Trying to see. I think you guys answered most of the questions in here just on the fly.
We just had one about password resets. I don't know if we talked about that one yet. Whether
if you see the question, can you go ahead and read it?
Yeah, whether users can reset their own passwords now, I don't know.
It will be system generated, yes.
Gotcha.
And I can field this one. So currently,
Gotcha.
and I have to deal with this all the time as well. Olga password has expired, and then when you go to reset your password, you have to reach out to our IT team at DRPT. It is my understanding that WebGrants, you will not have to do that. That you'll, like pretty much any other web-based platform, you will just have to follow the reset prompts, and it'll send you an email to reset your password. So so you shouldn't have to contact us directly if you need to reset your password in WebGrants. Gladys, good question here. Should we start downloading closed grants for our records since they aren't transferring over? It's not a bad idea. Again, we'll be talking to our IT team tomorrow to figure out if we have any other solutions that we can offer. But certainly, it's never a bad idea to go in and download any closed grants from Olga if you definitely want to maintain those records. That would probably be a best practice, regardless of whether or not we can pull over those grants into WebGrants. All right. More about those closed grants. Eric, we will continue to chat with our IT team about what our options are there. And Tracy, could you persuade the IT team to change it from 15 minutes to 30? We can ask them if that's even a possibility. I'm not sure what restrictions there are about that and whether or not we even have that ability. That might come out of the box with the WebGrants platform. Okay. Let's see.
Grant, I guess while we're looking for other questions, certainly we had been asked in the earlier webinar too about the fact that we're keeping the application period the same. And, certainly we understand it's a new system. Everybody will be learning, but, the February 1st deadline is so we can get things together before the new fiscal year. So, we all are working together, and we'll be flexible about working with you all to make sure we get all the information in. And even with this new system, that we get things, we're successful and get through the grant application period. So we appreciate y'all's patience and teamwork with us.
Yes. And a couple more questions just came in. Gladys again, will users be granted different levels of access in WebGrants? Zach mentioned this earlier on. We're working with our developers to see what options we have, but currently, as of right now, all users will have the same level of access, all external users. So what I mentioned earlier on about contracts and getting signatures on contracts, on the DRPT side, the last person to sign a contract in WebGrants will then have a list of staff associated with that organization who we're sending a contract to, and it's basically a drop down. So we select who to notify to sign that contract. But that does not mean that any of that organization's users have different levels of access. They all have the same access. It's just a notification for signature. And again, we are working with our developers to figure out if we can kind of customize those levels of access, but as of right now, they are all generic. And yes, we are recording this webinar. Jess already responded. We will be posting the recording on our YouTube channel, and I believe we are planning to distribute the slide deck as well. Okay. Any other questions? I think we've answered all the ones that have come in the chat, but we have about 15 minutes left, so we can entertain a few more if needed.
Miriam, do they just let you know if they want their mic on? I mean, you guys can ask questions, I guess, if you got any burning, since we do have some time, but be unmuted maybe.
Looks like there are no more questions, Zach.
All right. Well, can't say how much we appreciate all of you, taking part in this, so we can all be as prepared as possible. And we're available, and be looking for those. We'll have another communication coming out to all of our partners within the next couple of weeks. I think we're planning next week, so continue to look for information from us, and using the resources to get up to speed on this new product. And we'll be here to help. So anything else? All right, thanks everyone. Have a great week, great holiday, and we look forward to talking to you again soon.
Thanks.
Thanks everybody.